that your relationship with Tanith over time changed in any way as you got to know each other more professionally?
I think that it got deeper, and I think that it got closer. I do want to share something with you that brought all this up when we were talking about Tanith. Um, Many years ago, as you remember, I was the editor of Weird Tales, and then my publisher sold it to a group of people, and me and my entire female staff were fired. Which, everyone knows what happened then. And my husband, who was so wonderful, wanted to do a surprise for me for my birthday, and he wanted to make me a scrapbook that had all of different people's thoughts. And he reached out to a lot of different people to ask them to contribute something to my scrapbook. This was all done as a surprise to me. I did not know about it at all. And Tanith was one of the people that he reached out to. And she wrote me a short little piece of flash fiction.
Okay. Oh my God.
It's far never published, but I will read it to you. Yeah. I found it. This was from 2012 is when she wrote this. Okay, so we're talking a very long time ago that she wrote this little piece for me. This is for my scrapbook. My husband printed it out and put it in the scrapbook, but this is from the email she sent. Crossing the dark and misty lake, Anne, the heroine, encountered a sudden crowd of unpleasant-looking monsters that howled and yowled at her. Standing firm in true heroic fashion, Anne inquired what they wanted. One monster instantly exclaimed, "To bite you." "Try it, dear," said Anne coolly, "and I shall bite you back." "Then I will smite you," said another monster. "Be my guest, sweetie," said Anne, fixing the fiend with a stern smile. "I won the smiting championships last year, but don't let that bother you." A third monster bounded forward. "Yes?" asked Anne, tapping her sword belt. "I wish only to write," said the third monster, "and these other fools only want that too, but they're too shy to admit it." At this, all the other monsters blushed or giggled or lowered their many eyes in nervousness. "Will you, great heroine, undertake our cause and edit us?" At that, such a warbling clamor erupted, the mist and dark themselves fled from the lake, leaving blue water, sky, and sunshine. Anne said she would take a look at the monsters' work. Luckily, the monsters all turned out to be virtual or total geniuses who brought fame and fortune to themselves and to she who assisted them. The rest, of course, will be history. Moral: you can't beat or bite a splendid editor, especially a strong and fearless one.
That's lovely.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, yes. It's funny and it's pointed and it speaks to her respect for you, actually. It's all of that. It's great. I mean, oh my God.
You were talking about some writers are bitter if they're not getting published. Okay, at the time that she wrote this for me, because of what happened at Weird Tales and all of that other stuff, she wasn't at the top. She wasn't being published all over the place, but she took the time to sit down and write something because she knew that I was hurting. She knew that I had had such a loss when I lost that editorship. And she did that for me. She didn't have to do that.
No. And honestly, I'm really glad she did. I was just starting to try and publish back in 2012. And so you were one of the editors I was submitting to, but not quite getting through to. And but I felt an affinity for what you were doing. And as a young, somewhat eccentric writer who was all not young, but as someone who is very much themselves and an oddball, and also a woman in a field where you're never quite sure. It's much better now, but still, it felt bad when that happened, to see that and to see you and everyone else go. It was a weird kind of loss for me too, because it was like, oh, even when something looks like it's good, it gets taken away, and that's just, it was it's infuriating now, but at the time it was it was infuriating, but also a little bit scary, you know? Is this really the landscape of where I'm trying to find my own footing? You know, it is a weird, it didn't just, I know it hurt you deeply, but other people were taking note too, I guess is what I'm saying, you
Well,
know?
it was really sad when that happened to me because I had all these plans of what I was planning on doing with the future of the magazine. As a matter of fact, a couple of months before John Betancourt sold it to Marvin Kaye, we sat down and had a business meeting, and I laid out I had a 2-year plan and a 5-year plan of where I wanted to position the magazine and what I was planning on doing. And the thing that's really interesting is that John told me that this was the first time since he had been the publisher of Weird Tales under my editorship that it ever made a profit. All the years prior to that, he was in the red. But when I came on board, he had finally made a profit. The magazine had finally turned around, and then he sold it, and I was gone. So
Uh,
it's like, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Because you know what they say, Julie, when one door closes, another one opens. And so through all that sadness, it was amazing to me the number of people that came out to support me that I did not realize that were there. And sometimes that's how you know that you're valued, is when something bad like that happens and you have people that come out and support you. But also it was because of that that I was given the opportunity to become an acquiring editor for Tor.com, which is now called Reactor. So
yeah.
that
And
was
you
such an
know,
amazing opportunity.
and I have to say that, you know, just as someone very far out of the outside, you know, because your aesthetic is like, I'm, you know, your aesthetic is very much like Tanith's writing. It's interested in the not interested in keeping everything in a box, right?
True.
And it's interested in letting authors stylistically too. You're interested in stylistic work as well. So there's a lot of things about what you're doing that yeah, you're right. It's like you doesn't Weird Tales, it was like I was part of a group of people who were like, oh, Weird Tales is now doing something interesting, and then it kind of fell. And then you moving over to what was Tor, it was like, oh, okay, the world really is opening up in a different way, and that's good, you know? So from the outside, I'm really happy that not that you lost Weird Tales, but that it turns out there is a community of people who are deeply interested in what you're doing
Well,
and
thank you.
trust your vision too, actually.